And, I was just meeting with some sheriffs today, and we were talking about the drug problem and the methamphetamine and fentanyl that are coming into Iowa across the southern border. And securing the border is so important to our law enforcement because we got to keep that down. And I would join with other good AGs from other states that have sued the Biden administration to get them to secure the southern border.
And how would that look exactly?
Well, there's a couple different ways. We have to use avenues under law. One thing that's important is always to be talking about the fentanyl and the methamphetamine that are coming across so people know the real cost of what is happening. It's not only all the people that are crossing illegally, but it's also all the illegal drugs that are hurting us, especially in the Midwest. But there are lawsuits like the Title 42 lawsuit that was led by some good AGs. There are some ways that we can sue the Biden administration also.
All right. Well, that's good news. Brenna Bird's our guest, AM 1400, KBFD, the voice of Fort Dodge. What is your central reason for running for Attorney General? What would you like to accomplish?
Well, the number one reason is we need an attorney general who will fight back against the Biden administration, and we need an attorney general who will support our law enforcement and work with our law enforcement across the state. And our current attorney general doesn't do it. He's a lazy liberal, and he's turned out to be Biden's AG, not Iowa's AG.
Well, he is a partisan. That cannot be denied. He is an absolute partisan. Brenna Bird's our guest, AM 1400, KBFD, the voice of Fort Dodge. I want to get back to my favorite president there, Biden, just for a minute. Because he seems to be using a post 9/11 law to enforce COVID policies. What is that?
Well, that is just what he did to try to forgive student loan debt, even on a married couple making $250,000. That's dangerous, that he would try to take that law and shoehorn that into some kind of power the president has to just hand out money before an election. That is dangerous, and it shows why we need an attorney general to hold the federal government accountable every step of the way, because they're going to do this more once the Democrats lose Congress. We're going to see the Biden administration trying to get away with more of this.
Do you think that the Republicans will take charge of Congress?
I guess, yes, I do. I'm optimistic there, but we still got a lot of hard work ahead of us, and that ultimately is up to elections in a lot of different states. But I think America is fed up with what is coming out of Washington. They're not following the law. They're doubling down on those liberal policies that don't work and that hurt people.
Yes, they do hurt. I'm particularly concerned, and I don't know what the Attorney General's office can do about this. I'm particularly concerned about the Biden administration's policies around green energy and ethanol. They're not in favor of it. They're not. I don't care what they say. I mean, Joe Biden can come here and he can campaign for Congresswoman Axne, but he is not, let me repeat, not someone who will support ethanol. And we absolutely must have ethanol in the state of Iowa.
Oh, we must have it, and America must have it too. I mean, ethanol makes so much sense when we look at what that means for our farms and for ag production and how that works for agriculture, but it also makes sense for people that need a clean, affordable, domestic form of energy right here in the United States.
Brenna Bird's our guest, AM 1400, KBFD, the voice of Fort Dodge. What would you do day one if you were elected?
Oh boy, day one's going to be a busy first day, right? But the first thing we do is make sure the whole office knows we work hard, we do the right thing always, we serve. And that starts with supporting law enforcement. And that also starts with making sure that we are holding the federal government accountable. So we've got a lot of lawsuits we'll put Iowa on day one.
You're an attorney, of course. What do you think of the government raid on former President Trump's house, private residence?
Wow. Well, I can tell you, I'm talking to a lot of upset and worried voters, and they're really questioning whether the federal government is going to start targeting them for their political beliefs too. And, that comes down to concerns about that, and then the 87,000 new IRS agents, things we hear coming out of the FBI, concerns that people have about their Second Amendment rights, parents going to school board meetings. People are worried about being targeted for their political beliefs. That's un-American, but I can tell you, people out there are worried.
Yes, they should be worried. The threat to individual liberties is always from the left, never the right. They can bark all they want, but what the Biden administration is trying to impose is autocracy. And
Yes.
there's no other way around it. This is a drive for power, and a maniacal drive for power I've never seen. They can talk all they want about Donald Trump. Donald Trump had his way, but he was not trying to smash our democracy. I see it the other way, absolutely. Brenna Bird's our guest at AM 1400, KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge. Supposedly today, and maybe you've seen this and I haven't because I've been on the air, a federal judge in Florida has released or agreed to release some portions of the warrant that was used to enter President Trump's house in Florida. By the way, they forced their way into a safe. They demanded that Trump security cameras be turned off. Why would they want the security cameras to be turned off?
Well, that's very interesting, and that's a question that I have not heard answered. And I'll tell you, I haven't seen that so-called redacted affidavit, and I wonder how much they took out of that before it was released. But it's just, it's just extraordinary that the Department of Justice at the federal level is going around commenting on a federal investigation. That is incredibly unusual. This whole thing is unusual, and people are very concerned about what is going on. In America, we're a country of laws, and that means something. Our Constitution means something, and the federal government, they need to follow the rules too.
I'm a little concerned about that. This was obvious. This warrant was executed after some judge shopping. There have been strategic leaks from the FBI, of course, under the cover of an anonymity. But the Washington Post and the New York Times, surprise, surprise, is getting a lot of anti-Trump information in justification for this raid. Now, I would like to repeat something to you, ladies and gentlemen, that the FBI has been corrupt for a long time. Does anybody remember J. Edgar Hoover? How about L. Patrick Gray, who resigned in disgrace? Who was the FBI director that Bill Clinton forced out of office? I mean, there's been a lot of ugly things happening with the FBI. Now, supposedly, they're the premier law enforcement agency in the world, and they can't be touched. Now, they've done a lot of good work, but this is not their best day. This is not their best day at all. And it's happening right before our eyes. And that's very, very disturbing. And what a coincidence. It was less than 90 days before the election. And let me say again, Biden's student loan plan, and you can tell me if you agree or not, is nothing more than buying votes with the taxpayers' money.
Yeah, they're buying votes with our own money, just before the election, and they're using a power, a so-called emergency power that's been around since 9/11, and using the pandemic to justify it. I mean, that's exactly what people were worried about with everything that's going on with the exercises of power after the pandemic, right? That it will never end. And just think about this too. That law that's based on for the global war on terror, that global war on terror has been going on since 2001. It's still technically going on. If the federal government is going to start abusing powers in this way, I think the new Congress needs to be very careful about the powers they give to the executive, because when they go outside the law like this, this is what happens. It is wrong, and it is a naked power grab by President Biden.
Well, President Biden has gotten even more specific. This is a racist administration. If you're targeting African Americans, which is a loyal vote bloc within the Democratic Party, for the student loan forgiveness, as far as I'm concerned, that's racial preference. Now, that hasn't really been denied. I've been watching the early morning news programs probably too much. There has been justification for these policies that specifically benefit African Americans. And the argument, of course, is a similar one that we've always heard from Joe Biden, is that we must do these things for African Americans because of racism. I mean, you can use any sort of justification you want, I suppose, but this is the most obvious I've seen. If this isn't vote buying, and by the way, Brenna, as you probably know, African Americans vote Democratic overwhelmingly anyway. So this looks like another stunt, again, just before the election. And it's crass. It should be illegal, but apparently it isn't.
Well, I do question the legal justification, just so you know. I think there are real problems there. But, part of what this is going to do, too, is make the inflation worse, raise prices. They are doubling down on all the things that don't work for the economy.
Brenna, again, I want to end up here, and I want you to bring out anything that we may have missed, because I'm not the world's best interviewer, close to it, but I'm not the world's best.
Well, you're hitting all the good stuff. I think, one of the things we need to think about too are all the people that work hard. Maybe they do go to college, right? But they work hard and they pay off their student loans, or they do like I did in college, where I worked full time in college. And then when I got out of law school, I did have law school loans, but I'll tell you what, I worked hard and lived on less in order to pay off my loans faster. And I was glad to do that. Nobody owed me free school. But, you look at somebody that gets out of high school and then starts their own business. This is a way of just telling them that everything they did doesn't matter, and that working hard doesn't matter. Personal responsibility doesn't matter. Just wait for a big government handout. And I think that is one of the big differences here, too. We believe in personal responsibility, not government bailout.
Yeah, that's for sure. Brenna Bird's been our guest. Hope to talk with you again.
Sounds good. Thank you.
This is AM 1400 KVFT, the voice of Fort Dodge.
Maximizing the return on investment of your farming practices. Hello, I'm Megan Grebner with Managing for Profit on Brownfield, a content partnership with Helena. Implementing the correct management practice is crucial to a farmer's bottom line. In this Managing for Profit, Aaron Siebenek, Agri-Intelligence Information Specialist with Helena, shares some ways for farmers to keep track of what practices worked and which ones didn't on their operations. We'll find out more on Brownfield right after this.
To protect his home and family from disaster, Steve used courage, wisdom, and his camera phone.
That should do it.
Way to go, Steve! By simply taking digital pictures of his family's important documents, Steve can always have them stored safely online, no matter when disaster strikes. Learn other simple ways to protect your home and family before a natural disaster at ready.gov. That's ready.gov. A message from FEMA and the Ad Council. To protect her home and family in a disaster, Karen was willing to wade through water, mud, and insurance paperwork.
Yeah, I can do this.
You go, Karen! By simply understanding and updating what her insurance covers and doesn't cover now, she'll be better prepared no matter when disaster strikes. Learn other simple ways to protect your home and family before a natural disaster at ready.gov. That's ready.gov. A message from FEMA and the Ad Council.
Having a better understanding of why some management practices worked and why some didn't can really make a difference to a farmer's bottom line. Aaron Siebenek is an agri-intelligence specialist with Helena.
Keeping track of applications you make throughout the year will help you identify what worked and what didn't at the end of the season. At Helena, we have a variety of tools through our agri-intelligence program that can monitor conditions in the field at different stages of production. Then we can take all of the data you produce throughout the year and generate a report card through our TrueYield platform.
So what is TrueYield? Siebenek explains.
TrueYield provides mapping and analysis to help farmers understand how variables across the farm impact yield and crop performance. You can think of it as a report card that breaks your farm down into areas that are performing well and areas that need some attention. The goal of TrueYield is to assist farmers with decision-making that both maximizes field output and best manages their overall investment.
He tells Brownfield farmers can put the data to work for their farms.
TrueYield uses mapping on a field-by-field basis to illustrate correlations between yield and soil test properties. So to get started, all you need is soil test data through grid or zone sampling, along with yield monitor data from a grower's combine. We can look at whole farm operations, individual fields, farms, or crops. TrueYield will identify the top 6 factors impacting yield across that area, like nutrient levels or pH, and it shows the number of fields and percentage of acres affected by that specific nutrient, and whether the yield was high or low as a result of those conditions. All those factors are summarized to create a complete picture of what's happening in the field.
Siebenek says there's a ton of information farmers can learn from yield data.
But in the past, it's been difficult to interpret and the volume can be overwhelming. Our hope with True Yield is to take the mystery out of it. With True Yield, we're able to prioritize better, which leads to better planning, more efficiency across the whole operation, and ultimately better results at the end of the season.
For more information about True Yield or any other Agra Intelligence services, visit HelenaAgra.com. I'm Megan Grebner with Managing for Profit on Brownfield, a content partnership with Helena.
If you or someone you love has had an accident, an illness, even a surgical procedure, when the time comes for mobility equipment, whether temporary or permanent, Daniel Pharmacy Home Healthcare is exactly what the doctor ordered. From bath benches and toilet seat elevators to walkers, wheelchairs,